What's good, guys? It's TSG. In today's video, we have another nominee for the Illuminati Council, Deraji. How's it going, man?
Going great. Really appreciate you having me on and doing this again for the DAO.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming on. Yeah, we obviously chatted before. I'm not going to pretend like we didn't. Yeah, we haven't actually spoken too often, and I'm glad that we're actually finally making this happen. So I'm excited to. You've always had a lot of great ideas, and I'm excited to hear what you say, and the questions that I prepared. Obviously, cool. So let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into it. So the first question I want to ask, man, is what are your thoughts on the constant discussion? It feels like it's been going on forever about the epoch duration. There's always been people that say that it needs to be extended. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that? If it is to be extended, what would you like to see it extended to? Just where do you stand on that?
I think the key thing in any of these questions is like, what's the real impact? There's a lot of people that have, here's an idea or here's something to try. But I don't think we necessarily step back and say, what's the reason that we're doing it? So it's one thing to say 3 months versus 6 months,
Yep.
but there's the reason behind it. And I'd say, what are we trying to accomplish with DAO governance? And for me, it's decentralization and community engagement.
Yeah.
And so the question is that different if you have elections every 3 months versus 4 versus 6 versus annual?
Yeah.
And something you and I chatted about the other night just over DMs was like, there's a lot more engagement when it comes to the elections. And it's when we talk about stuff like this.
Yeah.
And so that's great that it happens every 3 months now. But should an election be the driving thing to get at that? Or should we create mechanisms in place to have those meaningful discussions in the interim when somebody's actually in place?
Yeah.
And so from that reason, I would say changing the duration actually solves a different problem, which is the engagement and like onboarding of new council members.
Yeah.
And so we do want new ideas coming in. I think we are going to see some different folks get in to the council over time.
Yeah.
But if they only have 3 months, you're kind of learning, okay, let's build relationships. Let's learn how things work. Let's have connections. And you're never actually getting value out of them. You're just constantly onboarding new people.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the main reason to extend the duration. So I would be for extending to 6 months.
Yeah.
But I think from a community engagement standpoint, we look at other mechanisms to make sure there's new ideas coming from the community. We genuinely understand where the sentiment is, and it isn't just who's typing the loudest and the most often into the IIP chat. And so that's how I would really solve that problem. So answer the question, yes, the 6 months. Drive engagement through the community. Making it 2 elections a year, I think, makes it more special than trying to get people that are tangentially interested in governance to vote 4 times a year, and just get more value out of the people that we have in.
Yep. Cool. And obviously, this is like you've laid out a lot of good points as to why you'd want to extend it. Have you considered, like, when you say like community engagement, have you also considered the fact that how, like, what the community sentiment might be about having to vote every 3 months? Like, do you think that's like, do you think the consensus is that it's a nuisance? It puts people off? Because we kind of see what it's like in just everyday life outside of the DAO. People kind of say, oh man, we have to vote again. And that's like every 4 years. Do you find like the same consensus applies in the DAO as well, or?
I mean, I've been covering with kind of statistical articles of like who's voting, where are the wallets, things like that. And something we saw up until the last one was like increasing participation in number of wallets. And then in the last election in, was it February, March? We were way down. We were like a third of the participation before.
Yep.
And so that was the concerning thing for me. And it really goes opposite what we're trying to achieve of decentralization.
Yeah.
And so if we make it 6 months, like it becomes a bigger festivity.
Yeah.
Like I even wonder, are there things that we can do to integrate with Snapshot and Discord of like, can you get for a week I voted role in Discord, kind of just promote that awareness. And if you're doing it every 6 months, it becomes more special than, oh, it doesn't matter, I missed this one. It'll be back around in 3 months and they're not going to accomplish anything. So I think it's countering that and making it more unique, more special.
Yeah, I actually wonder if that like role, the I voted role, is a possibility, because that's actually genius. That's really smart. Because if everyone has like a different color, like a purple or something like that, um, people are gonna ask, "Oh, what is that?" And it just kind of creates a conversation around that. So that's a really good idea. Um,
Exactly. I mean, people are going to feel left out of like, oh crap, I'm chatting and I'm the only one that's very clearly hasn't voted. And so now you kind of have the guilt factor of
yeah, yeah.
participating in governance as well.
Yo, psychologically just torment them. Yo, why haven't you voted? uh, all right, cool. Let's move on to the second question, man. The second question that I've got for you today is with the land sale coming up, this is going to be our first real example of revenue distribution. Um, and obviously, it's going to be the first bit of large amount of revenue that the DAO gets and distributes back to stakeholders. Where do you stand on how that revenue should be distributed? Do you think it should be in a lump sum? Do you think it should be over a longer period? And what would that longer duration be, and why?
Yeah, and this is actually exactly what I'm working on for my next article for Infoluvial, is doing math to say, okay, how, if we divided it up, first of all, like I've looked at if they just did lump sum right now, what would happen, and kind of playing the projections of where we think revenue is going to come in. And I think that is the worst possible thing we can do for nearly everybody involved. And so again, go back to what's the impact? What are we trying to accomplish? And the point of revenue distribution is rewarding long-term commitment of investors to the DAO and sustaining the treasury. And so with that, you want to maximize the number of ILV tokens that you receive. If we go in today and we dump all of the ETH into the sushi pool, pull out ILV, we're going to get so many fewer ILV tokens to the treasury and to the people that are staking. And if you look at who does that reward, it rewards somebody that's sitting on the sideline with loose ILV that they bought before, waiting for that pump, dump it, take profit, because it's going to create an unstable ILV price.
Yeah.
And so then we need to look at like, okay, how long do we want to spread this thing out?
Yeah.
And so with that, we still don't have a like continuing paid player base. Like that's ultimately where we're getting to. Once we get there, you can do RevDis on a totally random basis because we know it's going to be stable. This is a single term event. And so I wonder, can we use that to offset the other major concern from the community, which is token unlock, which happens in about 40 days.
Yeah.
And so you need to extend it at least past unlock. But RevDis ultimately is the way that you keep people wanting to be staked, whether that's people like you and me that are just normal guys that are staked, or it's the seed or team tokens. Because if you know, hey, I leave this in there, I'm going to have this more tokens coming back in the form of RevDis versus I sell right now. So it ultimately is the way to counter selling.
Yeah.
I think we need to time it until we get a reasonable chance at stable revenue coming in.
Yep.
And so I would look at like a 6-month term for that reason, make it random, stretch it out, because that to me drives the community sentiment of why would seed and team sell? Why should you and I sell unlocked tokens? Because we know there is this pool that's coming in.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah. And so with the whole idea of extending it, having the duration for 6 months, do you think that that's just a thing for this particular land sale, waiting for the consistent revenue coming in later on? Or do you think that's the 6-month duration is going to be applied for the next land sale, or once the game comes out? What are your thoughts on that?
We need to look at the data. Right now, I know what the impact to the sushi pool is going to be, and it's going to reward those people that want to dump shares.
Yeah.
And so that is the group that I don't want to reward with this.
Of course, yeah.
We'll see when Illuvitar's is, what things look like there. And it also depends on how big is the revenue from this.
Yeah.
Like if it's where I'm projecting, it's going to have a big impact. Illuvitar is probably the same thing. I would spread that out. Once we have stable income, and we can also see what's the depth in the sushi liquidity pool. And so if we have second land sale, but we have open beta and paid players, now we can again say, what's the impact if we would do it a shorter duration?
Yeah.
Or is it okay just to do it all at once to reward the people that are staked at that moment.
Yeah.
I would say let's potentially look at extended terms for these bigger events, but wait and see what the pool and the situation looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're obviously like a massive data guy. So make sure you look at the data and then make that decision, which I think it should be the way. I think we should have a look at the data before making like big changes like that. All right, cool. So I'm just gonna move on to the next question, man. The next question is the monetization and the whole thing again with land about the fluctuating price of fuel, how it's going to be able to fluctuate 25% either way. And this is obviously going to affect the general player on their loops in the overworld and things like that. So it's the discussion is that some people are against it, saying that no, they just want a fixed price for travel. Some people are saying no, we like the 25%. Some people are saying we want the 25%, but pegged to USD, not ETH. And some people are saying get rid of the rails completely and just let it be completely free market. Where do you stand on that discussion, and what data do you bring to the table if you have any?
This one's more of a psychological one to me. And so again, talking impact, there's three groups that are affected. There's the player that's playing, like, I just want to come in, mainstream player, play open world, collect, travel as part of that. You got landowners and you've got the DAO.
Yep.
And so you look at each of these different scenarios under each of those different groups of players and say, what is kind of the optimal arrangement for that? And so I'll start with the player. Like, there's an element of you want there to be immersive lore in this.
Yep.
And to that, like, in the real world, you and I are used to the price of gas going up and down. Like, there isn't, like, I know exactly how much it costs for me to go to the grocery store with my car. Like, no, I gotta go every once in a while and fill up my car at the pump. And that's the only time that I care about the price of gas.
Yeah.
I don't do the math every time that I go to the store of like, I'm using
this much,
0.5 gallons of gas and this much. And so what you're trying to do there is like, it makes it real that, okay, I want to buy fuel for my travel. Mm-hmm. I can game it a little bit of like, depending on what my play style is, let me wait for fuel to be a little bit lower and stock up.
Yeah.
We talk a lot of these in like, what is the dollar cost of travel? We need to take the dollar out of it. Mm-hmm. We need to make it so I'm buying 100 units of fuel, and I'm just looking at the fuel market right now, and I just know when I travel, it costs me 5 units of fuel.
Yep.
You take the dollar out, you don't think about it. It's just like driving your car when it has gas in it.
Yep.
The piece there is you don't want to create an opt-out moment from the player by having fuel be so ridiculously priced of like, I'm used to paying $4 for gas, and next time I go to the gas station, it's $100.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, I'm going to buy a bike, which in our case is I'm going to quit this game and go somewhere else because I can't, it's prohibitive for me to doing it.
Yeah.
And if we look at what's the role of the landowner and the DAO, and this has really been my platform of why I'm running and what I want to make sure that we're focused on, is it's a quality game, it's driving mainstream gamer adoption, and it's retaining paid players.
Yeah.
And so to me, taking the rails off entirely and putting the pricing of travel in the hands of probably 5,000 people that are going to play and actively be interested in land, have them potentially impact the gaming experience and create opt-out moments for 10 million, like that doesn't make sense to me. And so from that, I'm very interested in, like, it's an experiment. Let's try 25%. And if we're constantly hitting the walls of that, but we're still getting paid player adoption and retention, okay, let's consider a little bit of expansion and maybe turn that back. But I absolutely wouldn't turn it off. And I think if you do fix it to a dollar amount, you lose gamification both on the open world player and the landowner.
Yeah.
And so I'm against that. Like, you want this to be fun. You want it to be engaging.
Yeah.
And I'm super interested in being a landowner and playing the economics of it. It's like, okay, now it's a time to hoard. Okay, price is back up. Let me dump it on the market before anybody else notices. Mm-hmm. It's those inefficiencies that are going to make it fun for me.
Yeah.
But I think there's a real world element to the player. And from the DAO sense, it really is about keeping me engaged as a landowner, that I don't want to just dump this thing. It's not paying off.
Yeah.
For the player, it is having that long-term paid adoption and retention.
Yeah.
And so we just want to maximize that and limit the number of opt-out moments that we have with them.
Yeah. No, I think that's super well thought out, man. All of your answers have been super well thought out. All right, man. So we've hit that 15-minute mark. I'm gonna hit you with one last question, a fun way just to end off. Have you actually watched my video with Venomore? Do you know what the question is?
I cheated. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what the question is? All right, cool. Now, it makes sense. I was going to say, like, for everyone that is, like, nominating themselves, I think they should watch these interviews if they're coming on so they know what to expect. But yeah, so, you know, the whole land, Tier 5 is coming up with arenas. If you had naming rights, what would you name it?
So for me, like, I'm not promoting anything. Like, this is one of the things that I think makes me unique as a candidate is I want to be independent. I don't plan on joining guilds. I want to be accessible to anybody in the community.
I like that.
And so I'm not promoting some other business. If folks want to donate to support what I do, awesome, but I'm not advocating for that. And so this is a spot where it's like, what's the cause that I want to actually drive? And we've had talks about charity.
Yeah.
And so if you gave me a tier 5 property that's going to be used in esports, gaming, and really draw a lot of attention, is I would rotate through a number of charities that I want to support to give them kind of the visibility and promote that. Because I think that's a unique way that we do have kind of this platform potentially over time and raise awareness to the things that we want other folks to donate to, or even say like, hey, a portion of the proceeds from this event are going to go to this charity.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it just so much more meaningful, and you're going to draw in more to the community because of that.
Yeah.
So not a fun answer,
No,
but I
but
think that's a
yeah,
real
like-
answer of how I would use it.
Yeah, and I was gonna say it's not a fun answer, but it's a really like good answer to show the type of person you are, which again, like super thoughtful. Again, for anyone that hasn't seen you in governance or just like seen you around, if they watch this, I'm sure like they're gonna get an accurate representation of who you are, and I think that's super important, especially as this election is coming in. But yo, honestly, thank you so much, man. This has been I was gonna cuss, but this has been a pleasure. Like I've really enjoyed this, and actually we've got a podcast. You're coming on the podcast tomorrow, so I'll have a proper chat with you again. But before I let you go, is there anything you want to kind of close off with before we end this?
No, I just again want to say thank you for doing this. I think this is a huge value to the community. And for me, especially when you read my election articles, I'm all about decentralization. I think we need to keep pushing that. That's really what makes this GameFi and especially Illuvium unique and sustainable. But that relies on people voting. And so you got to be engaged. And it doesn't matter if you've got 10,000 tokens or you've got one. The quadratic voting system enables that we all get a voice. And so that's the piece that I would ask, whether you vote for me, vote for somebody else, participate and be engaged in the community, give your ideas, but vote for somebody that represents how you want to be heard in that room when the council is discussing. So that's my call to action. Get out there and vote.
I advocate for that as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing these videos. I just want everyone to participate. Like you said, even if you disagree with Deraji, like just go vote for someone that you think represents you, because that's the only way this whole democratic thing is going to work. So, but yeah, again, thank you so much, man. For everyone that is watching, I've got a lot of these interviews coming out, so stay up to date, stay informed on who you want to vote for. Like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.